Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back, everybody.
Please do subscribe to both channels, EEARTS and also over on Evolutionary Energy Arts. Yesterday we did one on EEARTS that was a lot of fun, and it did run an hour and 20 minutes long, so it was a longer one. But happy to see it. It really seemed to help a lot of people put things together.
And that's what we need in this crazy time. It's like we need understanding because that helps us move forward in the right direction.
Absolutely. It's a crazy world out there. It's blood moon, eclipse coming, the election day tomorrow. So much craziness. We want to thank everybody for your support over on Ko-Fi, where you could do a one-time donation that does support the channel, and we couldn't do it without your help there. And also on Patreon. Here you can also do monthly, just like you could on Patreon, for monthly support. So again, we couldn't do it without you guys. Okay, what does he have to say today? Apparently nothing, because I turned the sound off. There we go. Okay, let's listen.
Prescription drugs are seen, no matter what their cost. 2, 10, 12, 15. Oops, stepping on them. That's black. Anyway.
What was that all about?
Prescription drugs are seen, no matter what their cost. 2, 10, 12, 15. Oops, stepping on them. That's black. Anyway.
Yeah, I have no idea what he saw, whether it was really there, whether it wasn't. It's just, you never know what you're going to get when you watch 46.
No, and you just never know when those little etheric bugs are going to show up.
So we have barricades set up outside Maricopa County's election headquarters. Yes, this is the new norm. Kari Lake is maintaining, they say, a steady lead in the polls as Election Day approaches. And in case you missed it, the FBI is investigating suspicious powder that was mailed to her office. And so this powder was sent out. And I haven't seen the results yet. I do not think they've come out yet as to what this was. Was it powdered sugar or was it something diabolical? Well, when we know, we'll let you guys know.
Yeah, I mean, anything like that's just diabolical, even if it does turn out to be sugar.
Sugar's diabolical.
Yes.
And here we see Prime Minister Rishi Sunak rushed off the conference room by his aides ahead of his speech. Mysterious circumstances, all sorts of people wondering, what was that all about? So an aide had came up to him, whispered something in his ear, walked away, started to walk away, came back and said something to him again, like, you're supposed to follow me now. Okay, and he rushes off. And hurried, you see. Well, at some point in time, hopefully we'll find out what that was all about.
Oh, they're not going to be able to cover it up too long.
Yeah, it feels like maybe Nancy won't be around too much longer. As far as being, in her particular position. Obviously, there was that incident with her husband and all the he said, she said, Anyway, this is talking about how there's a lot of buzz that it might be time for No Nancy to hit the road. And, perhaps it'll be her own party that makes the decision that it's time to put a new face up there.
Yeah, I would think so.
And talking about an older face, you guys remember Jen Psaki?
Psaki.
Oh, thank you for correcting me, dear.
You're welcome.
Well, it's interesting. So she and the DOJ fight social media speech suit subpoena. Missouri and Nebraska are seeking testimony from the former White House press secretary and other administration officials. Now I know why she stepped down when she did. It was because she didn't want to testify. And after reading this particular article, which I've seen reference to this, and we've mentioned this a couple of times, now we kind of understand what's going on, I think. a little bit better. Her stepping down was about this, really. So, former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki and the DOJ are fighting an effort to force her to testify in a lawsuit accusing the Biden administration of violating the First Amendment by pressuring social media companies to block or remove certain content about the plague upon the land and election security issues. Lawyers for
Psaki.
Thank you. Filed a motion Thursday in federal court in Alexandria, Virginia, seeking to quash a subpoena the states of Missouri and Nebraska issued to her in connection with the suit they filed in May against Psaki and a slew of other administration officials. Last month, a federal district court judge in Monroe, Louisiana, Terry Doughty, issued an unusual order requiring Psaki, or Psaki, and 6 other officials to sit for sworn depositions about federal authorities' interactions with social media firms. The order was rare because it came as the suit remains at an early stage, with the states pushing for a preliminary injunction that would prevent the administration from trying to encourage the social media platforms to limit some speech. It's also uncommon for courts to require high-level federal appointees to testify. Now, Psaki and the Justice Department are asking federal courts in Virginia to essentially countermand Doughty, an appointee of President 45, and excuse Psaki from testifying. So she left her White House post in May and is preparing to host a new show on MSNBC. She said requiring her to testify in the case would be extremely burdensome for her. Among other things, I understand that I would need to devote several days preparing for the deposition as well as attending the deposition itself, and that would be highly disruptive to both my work and my family, she said in a declaration filed with the Alexandria Federal Court. She has retained a high-powered attorney to represent her in the court battle, Jeannie Rhee, a veteran of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. Justice Department attorneys have also weighed in, arguing that if her deposition proceeds, it will almost certainly lead to a prolonged fight over executive privilege due to her role as a top advisor to President, 46. If permitted to proceed, the deposition of Ms. Psaki would inevitably set the executive and judicial branches on a collision course through adjudications of executive privilege, thrusting the court into the awkward position of evaluating the executive's claims of confidentiality and autonomy, and difficult questions of separation of powers and checks and balances would quickly be pushed off to the fore. Justice Department lawyers wrote, quoting from a 2004 Supreme Court case involving Dick Cheney, VP. Plaintiffs have not identified any evidence showing or even suggesting that she ever communicated with any social media company in her capacity as press secretary about misinformation, much less that she exercised coercive power to compel a social media company to take any action. The DOJ briefing says, under federal court rules, Psaki is permitted to ask Virginia-based court to quash or limit the subpoena because she lives in Virginia. Her motion was assigned to Judge Patricia Giles, a Biden appointee. In recent years, such motives have often been transferred to court handling the original suit, but the Justice Department said it opposes such a move this time. DOJ lawyers also noted Psaki is no longer a defendant in this suit, since she was replaced by Karine Jean-Pierre when Jean-Pierre took over in May. So she's no longer a defendant in this suit. And this is so fascinating to see this, because we all, I think, 99.8 or so % of us agree all the time, of those that watch our videos along with everything that we put out. It seems like there's a lot of agreements, and we understand the bigger picture here, and the fact that, again, even taking into consideration all the things we know about the founding fathers, the less than perfect. A lot of them were slave owners. Yet to imagine them conceptualizing this country the way it is now, according to what was written down, it's just ridiculous, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look at all this back and forth and this filing this court paper here and that court paper there and, back and forth. And in 10 years from now, maybe we'll have some kind of an answer. In some ways, it is encouraging. It seems like, oh, wow, maybe something's getting done. But I've seen these things happen in the past where all they do is they just shuffle papers back and forth. And honestly, nothing really gets done. But I'm never going to give up hope. I refuse to give up hope.
You could see it even in like today's movies out there where so much of the obvious corruption that exists, that's on a par with corruption that we would have only really imagined. Well, we wouldn't have imagined it. I think most people wouldn't have imagined the level of corruption that exists within every aspect of society right now. I don't think we could have, say, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, Again, once everything changed with September 11th, everything changed with Department of Homeland Security, the official police state coming in, everybody knowing every single conversation and email is monitored. And it's just a fact. And yet it shouldn't be, but yet it is. And it's one of those things that's kind of openly acknowledged, and yet nothing ever gets done. Like Cindy was saying, this is, again, when you have a fire that's raging out of control and nobody's going to do anything about it, it's going to wipe out everything. And that's kind of where we're heading as... the fire that threatens to engulf the entire planet that is raging all around us on so many different levels. We're getting to the point where, is there enough water and enough buckets and enough people ready to do the work to put that fire out?
I agree. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a lot of people working together. And we definitely have what it takes. We just need to do it now.
There were some very important bankers on the Titanic when it went down that were opposed to the whole banking system, the whole federal banking system. And as they went down, so did any sort of opposition to the, creation of the Federal Reserve. Again, federal name only. And when we look at what's going on now, really, it's for those of you that follow it, this channel and many others like it, it's just so obvious, we can see, and yet the insanity continues. Head of U.S. nuclear forces claims Ukraine just a warm-up for a very long struggle with Russia and China. Well, I guess it's relative. It's relative, because if you look at the U.S. participation in WW2, it's about 4 years. And, if you look at World War I, again, 3-4 years. Is that long? Well, Afghanistan's been occupied by somebody for much longer time, whether it's the Russians or the U.S. or, what you have now. This is relative, but we know what the stage is being set for. And people like one of our dear sisters, hi Michelle, we were just talking about it, and she was watching another show that was talking and had her really concerned about the prospects of a nuclear Armageddon. I think a lot of people are truly, truly concerned about this. And again, when we talk about the brokenness of this system, when you look at what they demonetize videos for, and you got to wonder, okay, well, if you're going to take a slant that's totally on the left, you probably wouldn't get demonetized. If you go take a slant on the right, you're probably going to get demonetized. If you take the slant that the whole thing is just a broken rig system, you're definitely getting demonetized.
Yes.
And, again, one of the things they say is, does this contain sensitive issues? Well, anything could be a sensitive issue. How arbitrary is that? Anything could be sensitive. Does this contain anything that might upset some of our viewers? Well, anything you see in the news is going to upset somebody. And yet there are still channels out there that are monetized, taking a particular stance, and they're still getting tremendous views, even though they're talking about the same stuff. This is truly a system where the corruption has gone beyond most people's ability to acknowledge just how corrupt it is, to the core. And here we see Chinese President Xi to visit Saudi Arabia by year end. Again, I see actors on a stage. That's what I see. I don't see people that make all sorts of different decisions. Well, yeah, they make a lot of small decisions, but they're given the main parameters. And this is part of, again, the shifting of the power. And we were also talking to an American soldier stationed in Saudi Arabia, which, I don't like the feel of being an American soldier in Saudi Arabia right now. Of course, there was the threat of warfare from Iran attacking Saudi Arabia, but to me that always felt more of a ruse. And even if there is something that happens there, it's not going to be long lasting because of this. These are allies. And Iran is a strong ally with China. And this is the stronger relationship. And I do think the U.S. will end up pulling all of its troops and military forces out of Saudi Arabia sooner or later, hopefully in an organized manner and not something that is a horrible fiasco.
No, and I look at these guys here and, talk about them making decisions. I doubt they even really make the decision about what they're going to wear. I mean, here, maybe they got to make the decision, should he show his left, right side, which side is my better side? Maybe he can make that decision. But yeah, this is very, very scripted.
It is. And so, again, we were talking about BRICS, adding the S, you could duplicate that S and add the A. And as Saudi Arabia most likely is going to become an official member, so we could just keep going out. BRICS, Algeria applies to join BRICS. So, they meet most of the criteria to join the economic bloc, which is now greater than 40% of the population of the world. So as we watch the end of the dominance of NATO and the U.S. and the rise of what's to come, the world is racing to break China's rare earth dominance. And this tells you just how far in advance things are planned too, because we're talking about the shift to batteries, to lithium, and all these other very, very rare elements. And who controls the vast majority? It's China. It's China. Do you think that's just a coincidence? No. This has been planned for decades upon decades, and it might be mind-blowing, but perhaps even longer than just decades. Mm-hmm. Why is the U.S. government pursuing war with Russia and China, but not preparing for war with Russia and China? Well, that's because it's not going to be one that's meant to be won by the U.S. and NATO. That's the obvious answer. As this article is talking all about why are we, putting ourselves into a place where, it's two trains steamrolling against each other. However, one side has a exit plan, the other side has no exit plan. Well, again, Russian citizens have places to evacuate to in case of a nuclear Armageddon. The U.S. citizens don't. Right there, that should tell you something. That should tell you something. It's because this war is not one in which the U.S. and NATO is meant to come out on top. Yet again, even China's lead on the stage will be a brief one. As you see, China's marriage crisis is an existential threat to its country. President Xi Jinping recently vowed to launch comprehensive initiatives to address China's rapidly declining birth rate. The kids are wound up in the background there. Behind the bombastic rhetoric, however, there lies a truly sobering fact. New policies probably won't be enough to arrest China's demographic decline. And here's why. In China, hyper-traditional society, having a child out of wedlock is still frowned upon. It goes into all these things. Also the fact that less people are getting married, but we see this too in Japan. Look to Japan. You know, people stay single. People work for the companies. People are married to corporations. People are corporate slaves. This is the ultimate reality is there's only a certain amount of humans needed to be corporate slaves in this new world. Of course, the one child per couple thing definitely created a dynamic that would be hard to overcome. Then we add into the fact that fertility rates all around the globe are lower for the most part, almost everywhere, the entirety. You're seeing fertility rates decline, sperm counts somehow just evaporating. Guys, don't put your cell phone in your pants, and don't put it by your heart either. Guys and gals, if you're carrying around an FIVE, smartphone, put it in a case and have that case be one of those that's like, I don't know what the technology is, but it's the same as if it was like lead lines.
Yeah, it's like in a microwave or something.
Yeah, you need to do that because, the power is turning up. And we're hearing from so many people, it's not just us that discover, wow, we got signal. We never had signal here. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of signal everywhere. Russia withdraws 2 warships after Turkey denies Black Sea access. Again, Turkey is one of those countries to keep an eye on. I would not be surprised to see them shift sides in the coming conflict multiple times, but ultimately be doing their own thing, trying to revive the Ottoman Empire and create a new Islamic state of basically a unified Islam is really what the goal is there from Erdogan. And so watching this, we see the Gerald Ford heading over. It looks like it's going to enter through the Straits of Gibraltar and come into the Mediterranean. They say it's going to port up in the UK. I don't know, something feels weird about the map today. I do see the Tripoli down there in Australia. That would be perhaps positioning. We'll see if we maintain forces down there. Because again, if conflict was to break out, it would not take long for Australia to be totally under control of the CCP. And here at this point in time, we have 2 in the Pacific theater up by Japan and off the coast of China, and also basically would deal with North Korea, as we're looking at carrier strike groups here. So, this is a little bit unusual, and it just has a weird vibe to me. And, it could be nothing. Holland says enough is enough and becomes the first European country to withdraw sanctions against Russia without permission from the EU. Oh, there's cracks in the dam or cracks in the dike, and Holland is saying, okay, that's it, we're done. Enough economic suffering. Too bad, so sad. We're bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Well, again, the people are tired of what's going on. And it's going to take the people to make real change. And they're going to have to be not satisfied when you're handed change that's not going to be long-lasting. That's the key. Italian protesters demand an end to arms supplies for Ukraine. And, again, tens of thousands maybe hundreds of thousands is more like the reality. And all over the world, they're still marching. They're still, protesting down in Brazil as well. Multiple neighborhoods are evacuated as explosions rip through chemical plant on Georgia's coast, sending a large plume of thick smoke into the air. So, reports of an explosion. When you go by Brunswick, it always stinks, and it's just that paper plant smell, but there's more things on there as well than the paper plant. But you can see they did evacuate people. Hazmat from Jacksonville was en route to the scene too. Just another one. I mean, there's been countless of these. Flames engulf 35-story residential building in downtown Dubai. And we have 5.5 now million illegal aliens that crossed the borders since 46 took office. Not counting all the millions that have been coming in for like the last 20 plus years. Man, we have an army in place, a massive army. It might be one of the biggest armies the world has ever seen that could literally be in place right now in the U.S. with all the people illegally inside the country. Now, is this just another coincidence? I mean, this young guy, believe it or not, well, let me read you this story. Let's shift gears. Let's read his tweet. He said, "Before I thought it was Illuminati CIA people doing sophisticated moves to set me up somehow because I was a threat to the central banking cartel. Now I realize these are probably the cheapest PIs money can buy, sent by local banking duopoly. Even round one shills in chat were smarter." So this young gentleman, 29-year-old co-founder of Maker DAO, has been found dead. His death has shocked the crypto space that has been witness to a series of tweets that he had made days before his death. The tweets, which levied serious accusations against powerful organizations, are now being analyzed following his death. Now, they say he drowned. He's 29 years old, in the crypto business, and he had said CIA and Mossad and the PEDOE lights are running some kind of this is the type of stuff that really gets you in deep doo-doo. And if it was BS, wouldn't there be no doo-doo to get into in reality? Well, he even said that they were going to plant a laptop on him and stuff, or they would torture him to death. Well, he's no longer with us. He was 29 years old. And he was living in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Wow. Just a young guy just about to get going. This should really, I think, cause some eyebrows to raise.
A few, yeah.
Meanwhile, hang on tight, guys. Over in Florida, we got another storm heading your way. Nicole, subtropical storm Nicole, which will become a tropical storm and potentially even a low, maybe a Category 1 hurricane. Looks right now like it's heading towards West Palm Beach area. Of course, the cone is larger. So, hang on tight over here. As you're looking at probably late Wednesday into Thursday, it making an impact. And these are the spaghetti models. So it should make that East Coast impact come in, maybe head over towards Tampa or Orlando, and then loop up back past Jacksonville and up into the Carolinas and Georgia. And so let's send our intentions that this won't be anything too severe, but it will bring quite a bit of rain with it. As you can see, West Palm Beach 3 to 5 inches, many other areas 2 to 3 inches of rain. So definitely expect some flooding. This Tonga eruption was, now they say, was the highest volcanic cloud ever recorded. Period. And David Adapt 2030 has been talking about this since it happened. And he knew right off the bat it was way higher than what they were saying. This is the highest ever recorded. And it's in an area, again, that will obviously cause cooling. And we get that it wasn't all natural.
No, and it really did shift a lot of different energies, frequencies. People's timelines were shifted because of this thing. It was huge.
And here we see the insanity continues. This is a chart on stillborns in Australia. And honestly, I'm not clear if this is just in the Melbourne area or where, to be exact, because it doesn't really show, but it does show a 1,500% increase. That's massive. When do you ever see a 1,500% increase in anything statistically like that when it comes to health? It's just, that's not natural. That's not natural. The biggest number we ever had was 2009. You had about 250 cases of stillborn. Again, we're talking about population decline, which is really, it is underway. Even though they said that today or thereabouts, right about now, we hit the 8 billion mark. I got my doubts because somehow I have a feeling that all the numbers aren't being counted properly when it comes to population. And so you go from 250 as an all-time high going back to 1990, and then all of a sudden we go to 3,700. That should raise an eyebrow.
It's pretty bad.
And yes, the diesel shortage is worsening. You've heard that there's only 20-something days left, but in reality, we're hearing that it's already hitting certain areas. And yeah, there is a diesel shortage going on right now. And, the price for diesel is significantly higher than the price for your average unleaded in the U.S. as well. And this is a harbinger of tough times coming, and it's going to all affect, as you see, these pumps all shut down. We were hearing of people in North Carolina, and I know Arkansas, they were mentioning it as well, that there was none to be had. I forget where else it was, but it was basically in the southeast to the south central.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, people who are right there on the front lines are seeing it, and they're getting stressed. So this is something that we all really need to make sure we're stocked up to last for a while through any kind of shortages or any bumps in the road.
And this is up in New Brunswick, $3 a liter. The prices are just going to go up. They've been artificially deflated, and they're not really deflated anywhere near enough. At the same time, we've also been emptying the strategic reserve. So when war breaks out, we won't be able to move stuff that you need to move. This is, again, way too perfect a storm to just be a coincidence. Vietnam gas stations starting to close due to shortages. So again, it's as you see, and over here, most people commute on bikes, mopeds, motorcycles. So the impact over there is a little different than the impact over here. Boy, it's going to be painful if we do get to. Can you imagine $10, $20, $12 a gallon with something like an F-350?
Ouch. That's going to be very, very painful.
Absolutely. And not that it's not painful already. U.S. natural gas futures jump as frigid weather set to swoop across the country when we look to the outlook. And, we were back up around 80 or low 80s again. And I did see that it's going to be dipping overnight lows into the 30s, close to freezing. So as you can see here, it's going to be getting colder, and everybody was talking about a long, dark, cold winter going back a couple of years ago. Well, it looks like this is what everybody was talking about.
Yeah, we're kind of here.
We are here. This is the time that we've been preparing for. Quarter of Europeans are on the brink of ruin, so says a new survey, and really half are just weeks away. And we are hearing of many people saying that they're, basically putting everything they can on credit because they're still trying to actually buy food and buy fuel and energy, and that's going to end up, it's going to end up with either hungry people or cold people, or hungry and cold people, the way things are going.
It's terrible.
7% surge in small business rent delinquency in October. Again, that's going to be going up as well. The real estate market is in the beginnings of a major crash. As you know, I get daily updates on many different areas, everywhere from out in the west, Arizona and New Mexico, all the way up towards the Pacific Northwest, and all throughout the South. And I'm seeing big drops. I'm seeing people dropping prices 20%, and that's a lot to drop. As far as real estate, typically, nobody's nibbling. All right, well, let's drop it 5%, see what happens. No, people are dropping it 20%, even sometimes 25%. What's coming, the crash that's coming, is going to be beyond most people's belief. Indeed. And here we have gun laws, abortion, and taxes. Why Eastern Oregon is voting to join Idaho. We've talked about this. But did you know that some counties have already voted that they are in favor of joining Idaho? As you can see, maybe there will be a state called Greater Idaho that's going to be almost doubling in its current size as far as land size. Of course, most of these areas are sparsely populated, most of the population in the cities. But still, it is an interesting thought because there really is no precedent. The last state to leave the state it was in was when Maine actually left Massachusetts way back. Was that 1820s or something like that? So, could that happen? There's really no precedent. But again, there's no precedent for the times that we are going through in our modern history.
Not at all.
How about this one? California man believes a meteorite destroyed his home. What? Yeah. Heard a big bang, started to smell smoke, went to the porch. It was completely engulfed in flames. As you can see here, this is the fire rescue coming. What's interesting is people saw it too. Did you see this? You can see it going by. Just typical. Coming on down, flashing. But in this case, supposedly it ended up hitting his house. Or was this two different things, or was it a part of this? Interesting.
It's pretty crazy out there.
Yeah, I mean, it demolished his house, unfortunately.
That's so sad, yeah.
Very, very sad. So, again, we send our prayers to him. Permanent daylight savings time will hurt our health, so says the experts. So, many of you might have enjoyed sleeping a little late. Yet, again, because of the tilt of the Earth, which from our understanding is not something that always was. It's part of this artificial system that's in place. And again, it has to do with the moon. It has to do with the Younger Dryas extinction event. And boy, it has to do with the fall from the Garden of Eden, per se. Because if the Earth was straight and not tilted on its axis like it is, we would have much more even weather. Now, you'll have scientists telling you that if the moon wasn't there, there would be no life here. But I think from what we've gotten, it's exactly the opposite.
There would be balance. There would be balance in astrology when you look at someone's moon. It's everything. It talks about where their mind is. So I look at the moon to be very, very much a control entity, something that definitely controls. And it's probably far beyond our understanding. But when it comes to savings time, I just think it's so annoying because you don't have to, our puppies, they don't care. The trees don't care. The flowers don't care. Nobody else really cares. I think it could just be everything be left alone.
Well, what do you guys think about that? So, again, in the summer, we get more sunlight going deeper into the evening hours, and then it's the exact opposite And that all has to do with the movement of the Earth as it goes ahead and wobbles. And, it hit me, and I know I've never lived up in Alaska or anywhere that gets all that sunlight in the summer, and you gotta just block out the light because it's always light out. And then in the winter, it's always dark out. Ooh, I wouldn't be able to handle that. I don't think I could handle that, truthfully. And of course, when you're at the equator, then there's really not that much difference between winter and summer. It's pretty much negligible. So again, it's just interesting. But they say that this actually would be a bad thing for our sleep patterns. But so is getting up and going to work at an arbitrary time. People should be able to flow. This is an economic slavery system that we have in place.
Indeed.
And here we see people claim they saw aliens after a UFO crash landed in Brazil in 1996. This was a documentary. It wasn't Roswell, obviously, in New Mexico. But on January 13th, 1996, the United States Air Force, this sounds like science fiction, shoots down a UFO, which crashes 6 miles from a medium-sized town in southeastern Brazil. 7 days later, 2 sisters, 14 and 16, and a 21-year-old friend spot a tiny, frightened alien with big red eyes, crouching by a wall. They run screaming back to their mother. The Brazilian police and military capture at least 2 aliens, one of which scratches an officer, infecting and ultimately killing him before dying along with its extraterrestrial comrades. The U.S. Air Force confiscates the alien bodies, take them to an unknown location. Vast cover-up by the Brazilian military enforced with death threats lasts for 26 years. If it's all made up, it's one of the greatest works of science fiction in history. Most everyone who hears the witnesses tell their story a quarter century later is convinced they're telling the truth. So now a documentary, Moment of Contact, which is streaming on Amazon and Apple TV, lays out the most convincing case yet that extraterrestrials not only exist but may have visited and died on Earth. A college professor and amateur ultralight pilot named Carlos de Souza said he witnessed the crash in Varginha, Brazil on January 13th, 1996. In the film, he describes the spacecraft as the size of a school bus, but shaped like a submarine with white smoke leaking out of a gash in its back. He compares the UFO to a malfunctioning washing machine rocking and jerking around in the sky. I guess that looks like one of those aliens. That looks kind of like a gray there, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Except for it's a brownish gray. De Souza says he ran to the site of the crash where he saw pieces of metal like thin aluminum foil spread across the field. He said he picked up a piece of the metal, crumpled it in his hand, and then let it go, at which point it returned to its original shape. Immediately afterward, he said the military showed up and soldiers started screaming at him to go away. Go away, go away, I'm ordering you, they yelled as one officer held a rifle to his face. 7 days later, sisters Liliane and Valkyria, Sylvia and their friend Katia Xavier were walking through an empty lot in between 2 houses when they spotted the creature just 8 feet away. I was in the front and they were a little farther back. Liliane said, who was 16 back then, and explains in the Moment of Contact, which was directed by James Fox. Passing by here, graffiti caught my attention. I looked and saw the creature appeared to be suffering from the heat. When Liliane screamed, I just looked and I felt fear, said Valkyria, who was 14 at the time. I looked into its eyes and saw that it was frightened just as I was frightened. The creature was also frightened. I saw that it was afraid of us. It was an exchange of fears. It for ours. Afraid of us in the same way we were afraid of it, a being we weren't familiar with. What I saw stopped me in my tracks, said Katia, who was 21. It glued me to that spot. It had red eyes, oily skin. I couldn't see an open mouth, not smiling. Sad expression, shrunken back. It didn't have hair, eyes 3 times bigger than ours. After Liliane screamed, she started running away, and the two girls joined her. What we saw wasn't human, and it wasn't animal either. Nowadays, I do think it was a being from another planet, said Liliana. It wasn't a man, it wasn't an animal. What it was, I can't say, says Valkyria. After we ran for a while, we stopped and we asked what we saw, and then we ran to our mothers. I came out to meet the girls. Their mother, Louisa, said in the film, because mothers have a sixth sense, they were scared and walking slowly and dragging each other, as you see the location of where it went down. We were children of Catholics, and I thought it could be a demon. That's why we were so scared. Lucia made the girls return, and when they got back to the spot, the mother saw the footprint in the dirt, which she drew for filmmaker Fox. It was a round foot with 3 long toes. For 20 days, I smelled its smell, said Louisa. I couldn't stand the smell. I don't know where it came from. I even washed my nose with alcohol and water. It was an ammonia smell. No, it wasn't ammonia, said the mother. It smelled worse than sulfur. What a strange smell. What do you make of this?
I don't know. I think it probably didn't like the way we smelled either. You know, I mean, those are just two different beings colliding. And, you know, to me, it's like, of course, absolutely, this has happened, not just here, but it's happened many different places. And when I had my awakening, I did have a dream about these little entities, and they looked just like grays. But they were showing me how I could make rainbows with my hand. And it was kind of interesting because they seemed friendly. So I don't think you can put all of them into the category that they're all just grays and bad. And they're not all demons either. You know, there's so much information out there that gets misconstrued, that gets confused, that gets used to keep us afraid and keep us in the dark from understanding that no, we're not alone. Life abounds. These entities are everywhere, and they probably can stand somewhat camouflaged, not very far from you, some causing trouble, some not, some just little beings, you know, that are curious. I'll be happy when the day comes that everyone understands that their perception of things is more real than they give it credit.
Well, and again, part of what we miss is that we miss the opportunity to interact with many beings that are very fascinating. And they're not all dark. And they're not all evil. And they're not all part of this AI draconian collective. In fact, the greater majority are not. And the greater majority would not really openly harm you. You know, that's really the minority. And when you look at the ones that are dangerous, it's the ones that are here that we see all the time. You know, the beings that are in control of this system. We have had, I really would have to sit down. We'd really have to think about it. But we've had interactions with, you know, I don't know how many different types of beings that you could definitely categorize as extraterrestrial. They don't come from here. And also interdimensional. Many of them we can interact with because Cindy is such a good channel. And because, again, you know, with Cindy too, you know, she is like, was it Whoopi Goldberg in the movie Ghost, that all the dead people are lining up because they recognize that she could see them? Well, that's Cindy. You know, I get glimpses, and I've also been able to see ghosts, what we would call ghosts, people that have passed on, as well as other entities my whole life too. But with Cindy, she doesn't miss any of them. You know, and they all come and knock on the door because they know how easy she can see things. So with us, the interactions are almost a daily thing with beings all the time. I mean, we were out in the desert and we would have beings show up because they're flying by. and they could check out and see that they're looking at our light bodies and they're recognizing light bodies that are not typical. And it would be the same with, you know, seeing the light body of a yogi, somebody, a Buddhist monk that's been doing years of meditation, that knows how to, draw in the life force, open up the chakras, activate aspects of our being that most people are not activated. Most people are like dim light bulbs, very, very dim light bulb. It's like a candle light. You drive over an area, you're flying over an area, and you're just seeing normal lights, like little tea lights in the distance. Then all of a sudden, there's something that's super bright. Well, you're curious. They come, they take a look. And if they think that you could hear them, they will talk to you. And so many people are visited. Many people are visited. More people than the powers that be want to let out do have interactions with other beings that are not from Earth, and in many cases are able to work between dimensions.
Mm-hmm. There's so much of that, so much information going through the different dimensions, and with me it's been a matter of learning how to shut it down for temporarily, because if you sit down and you open yourself up to all the things that go by, you can see layers and layers and layers of different dimensions and different entities in those dimensions, and it really gets overwhelming. It can bring your anxiety up because you are receiving so much information, and you just simply, the body is not created to process it. But until you learn what's going on and understand that and just sit down with it and start to pick it apart, then you can start to control it. And then yes, you do let these entities in little by little, and you learn to control that information. But most people aren't set up that way. Most people are looking at things in a 3D aspect, and they don't realize that there's probably entities all around you that are just waiting to say hello. And our government has done very well in educating us, or making us so that we think that there's nothing out there other than what's in front of us in the 3D. And that's just not the way things are. There's so much more out there. And if we were taught from very small children what was going on, we would all be seeing and perceiving and understanding so much more. But we're going to get there. We're getting there.
Yeah, it's shifting. It is shifting. And it's not just beings from other worlds either. There are so many different beings living on the planet around us now. It's very, very much like our legends and myths of the wee people, elves, sprites, gnomes, all different sorts of magical beings. They're not all demons. They're not all angels. They're just different beings, just like humans and animals. And, dogs are not cats. Cats are not birds. Birds are not dolphins. Dolphins are not minnows. Again, to categorize, it's just to put everything into one lump group is pure ignorance. It's just so ignorant, and it leads to it could lead to atrocities. Ignorance can lead to atrocities. And we can look at the Inquisition. We could look at all the different things, the Crusades, all these different religious wars throughout time. That were born, again, out of ignorance, really. And it's time for the world to wake up. Totally wake up. Because, again, we've never been alone. Mm-hmm. And, again, thank you guys for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. We couldn't do it without you. Please do share the videos. Share any one of them in particular that really resonates with you. We need to change the paradigm, wake people up. It's time for us to get out of kindergarten. It's time for us to leave this indoctrination system that keeps people in darkness.
Indeed.
Much love. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.